Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to share my thoughts and opinions of 2001: A Space Odyssey. These opinions and thoughts and ideas are collectively formed from both the movie, the book, articles that I've read, videos that I've watched, and accumulation of life experiences throughout my life. Starting with this, I watched this movie probably in my early teens. Star Wars, I believe, was the very first real science fiction movie, I guess you could say, that I saw. Then Alien. Don't know how I talked my mom into taking me to the movie theater to watch Alien, but I did. Then I saw 2001 on, I believe it was like HBO or Cinemax or one of the pay things. Unless, like I said, I was 8 or 9, 10 years old, maybe 11. So it could have been a special presentation on like NBC or ABC or something like that, where they aired it without commercials. But I don't recall watching it with commercials. Now, the book, I was probably in my late teens, early 20s, the very first time I read the book. And it did kind of shock me, the major discrepancies between the movie and the book. Then over time, in the early days of the internet, plus being an avid reader of like Omni and Popular Mechanics and stuff like that, I had started piecing my own opinions together. With the rise of YouTube and things getting put on YouTube, like interviews and stuff like that, there's some ideas that I threw away because they made no sense with the accumulation of more information from both Kubrick and Clarke. And some ideas were strengthened and emboldened by interviews that I saw with both of these genius men. One of them is a lot of people, I've probably watched 15, 20 different videos on it. I imagine there's a ton more that seem to think, or their opinion is that Kubrick was intentionally and maybe even a little maliciously manipulating Arthur C. Clarke in the writing of the book, because the book is not an interpretation of the movie, and the movie is not an interpretation of the book. They're both the same story in different mediums by different creators. Clarke was trying to get too many thoughts out at one time. Clarke was writing the book from the dailies or the rushes or whatever you want to call them that Kubrick was sending him. And Kubrick would often send him a bunch of stuff, then go back and reshoot it or rewrite it or what have you. So you have you have different interpretations of the story, or different viewpoints of the story. One of the biggest ones that I can think of right off the top of my head is the monolith at the beginning, at the dawn of man. main character, Moonwatcher, who in the movies unnamed, is the first to touch the monolith. And that, in the book, the monolith serves as a giant TV screen. This TV screen imparts information and knowledge into the apes, furthering and speeding up their evolutionary process. In the book, or in the movie, Moonwatcher touches it and instantly starts to evolve mentally. And he teaches his fellow tribesmen within his community, and they go on to slay the leopard and regain access to the water hole. Like I said, in the novelization, or the novel, there's an event where the monolith displays a target or series of targets and encourages the apes to throw rocks at it. So yeah, it's, which you don't get in the book, or not in the book, in the movie. You don't get in the movie. And it's just, and it's these differences like this. Kubrick, from reading Clarke, not only 2001 Space Odyssey by Clarke, but other novels and short stories that Clarke's done, and watching other movies that Kubrick's done, in my opinion, both men are geniuses. And there's always, and with that being said, there's speculation because the dimensions of the monolith in the movie and in the book are different. One of the things that I've come across, and it makes sense with Kubrick's IQ, that the monolith, the way it's filmed, its proportions, and I've heard two different sizes. Some say 70 millimeter and some say 76 millimeter. Whatever the original aspect of 2001 was, that if you take the monolith is like this, and if you turn it sideways, that it becomes the movie screen at those dimensions, at that aspect ratio. And the illusion, it's alluding to, if you jump back over to the novel, where the monolith is this giant TV screen educating these monkeys, or these apes, does that mean that in this particular portion of the movie, that we, the audience, are the apes, and Kubrick and Clarke are the engineers of the monolith? Just something to think about, something to let bounce around your little brain for a while. I know a few years back when I first started seeing stuff and reading stuff about that, it would kind of just, when you sat down and you thought about it, you're like, wow, that's kind of not insulting, because as the apes evolve through the movie, into modern man, space travel and stuff, because of the monolith, are we becoming better people because of Kubrick and Clarke? Don't know. It's just one of those things to ponder, to think about, just to let bounce around the little brain. How? As both Kubrick and Clarke have come back and have said many a times, that HAL is not derived from IBM with a one-letter offset, but And I accept that at face value because of product placement of IBM and IBM parts within the movie. That makes sense. Plus the movie, because of the respect that Clarke had, he had access to things within NASA while they were making the movie, behind the scenes, things that not everybody would have access to. So he did a lot of field work for Kubrick, going into NASA, looking on how things are constructed, what they're being made of, how they're being made, how the displays are set up, how, what kind of controls they're using. And was relaying this information to Kubrick, who was in England building your sound stages and your spaceships and your pods and all that. And I will get back around to hell, trust me, on this. So all that was being done. And some of your first computers were early or late World War II. And by 68, when they were 67, 68, when they were filming and making 2001, you had huge computers that would take up a room that had less computing power than your modern cell phone. And that in and of itself is scary, because that's the technology we put a person on the moon and brought him back again with. So, the idea that we would progress, our computers would progress in these leaps and bounds as we did more and had more need for them, is how Hal was invented or created for the story, that character. Unfortunately, we do not, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, don't have semi-sentient AI, or sentient AI, depending on how you view Hal. But the other technologies, as far as going from the putting a man in space versus landing him on the moon, that technology from over this 8 or 9, 10-year period had advanced. So it was a fairly logical assumption by 2001 that we would have sentient AI or semi-sentient AI computers. So, it didn't happen. We are finding out more and more that the brain is far more complex than what we think it is. So, and it's just how much or how many silicon chips in a space are we going to need, with how much information to bring sentience, an artificial sentience, into sentient, to make a sentient computer. Don't know. I don't know. I don't have the education to hypothesize that. But we will, hopefully in my lifetime we'll find out. Then again, we're talking about a movie that's older than I am. And I'm currently 51 years old, so we're talking, we're talking things. So it's just a wonderful movie. Like I said, I encourage people to do both. If you've seen one, if you've read the books and haven't seen the movie, see the movie. And vice versa. If you've seen the movie and haven't read the book, by all means, go read the book. And they're interwoven. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't think it was a manipulation by Kubrick. I think it was a collaboration with intentional changes and plot points. Not necessarily plot points, emphasis on certain plot points. To weave the book into the movie and the movie into the book. I personally think that enjoying one without the other, you're only getting half the story. You're only getting half the experience, half of the adventure. So it's one of those things. It's just, and still my appreciation of both mediums, both stories, is always evolving. It's advancing as my personal life, as I experience things, as I do things, changes, and I take in more experiences and see the world around me, look at the world around me, and look into the, look into the heavens, look at the stars, and all that. It's just, it's just fascinating that this, this story or stories, I think it would be more correct to say these stories because of the differences in the two. Have had on not only science fiction, but science. We, as human beings, tend to point at things. We cherry pick. They, like Star Trek, the communicators in the original Star Trek were supposed to have predicted flip phones. Yes, there is a correlation there, but correlation does not mean causation. 2001, the iPads that Bowman and Poole have. They go, well, see, they predict. No, it's not necessarily predicting. It's more of a logical jump, a logical conclusion. Because you go to anything such as, 2001, Star Wars, Star Trek, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, any of those great, science fiction works, and go, well, they predicted this, they predicted that, no. Those people that wrote those stories, let's not forget literature, Robert A. Heinlein, Philip K. Dick stuff. There are people on a point going, see, they predicted this, they predicted that. I don't think they did. What they did was they took an educated leap of faith that just happened to turn out. Like I said, we tend to cherry pick science fiction for our own benefit, our own, to make us feel better. But if you actually go back and you look at science fiction, both in film and literature, they actually get a whole lot more wrong than they get right. I mean, we're not shooting rockets out of cannons. So, it's, like I said, we do cherry pick. I think these geniuses that wrote these books, made these movies, made an educated guess, a scientific wild-ass guess, and just happened to come up correct. And take that for what you want. It's like I said, it's my opinion. You may have a different opinion. You may, you may not agree with my opinion. That's cool. That's cool, because differences is what we need in this world. That's how we evolve. That's how we get stronger. Differences of opinion provide competition. As long as that competition doesn't become conflict, we're good. Like I said, this 2001 Space Odyssey is almost, or at least the book, has some very, very Buddhist feel to it. Very, very, has a lot of Dharma in it, has a lot of karma in it. And anyone that has spent any time studying Buddha, there are things in Buddhism, and it doesn't matter what flavor of Buddhism, and that's just something over probably the last 4 or 5 years that I've noticed, is there are certain elements, and they're going to key off depending on what flavor of Buddhism you've studied or familiar with or think of. They're there. They will fire. They will throw that switch. They will fire that synapses. And there's a lot of Christian symbolism in it as well. There's also the symbolism of birth and rebirth. The Jupiter and into infinity portion, the last portion of the movie, if you accept, and it kind of does, once you see it, you can't unsee it, that the discovery is kind of this giant sperm being shot into space by Earth. And Bowman in the pod impregnates the Monolith, who basically a space vagina. And you go through that whole process, then you have the Star Child at the end looking down at the Earth, who looks down at the Earth and turns and looks at the audience, which is kind of a reinforcement of the whole, are we watching the movie or is the movie watching us, thing. Does Bowman realize at some point that he's a character in a movie? You do have the scene when he's after he's entered the Monolith and he's in the room, where you see the reflections in his visor of the crew, the movie crew working. And that was left in intentionally. Kubrick has said he left it intentionally and never explained why he did. So it's just things to go back and look at, watch the movie or reread the book to think about while you're doing it. So yeah, it's, you get this whole metaphoric impregnation thing. That's the reason why if you look at it from that point of view, that's the reason why the scientists in Pool had to die, because only one sperm can enter the egg. It's just how you want to look at it. There's all these questions, these answers, or questions that the answers are going to be as individualized as the person watching the movie or reading the book. And this is about where I'm going to wrap things up. Like I said, I was giving you things to think about, my opinions, stuff to help fertilize the brain, make it work, get the old brain juices cooking. So, until next time, peace.